Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the weekly Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Q&A. I'm Raphielle Johnson, joined as always by Noah Rubin. Noah, how's everything going after a six-game night Monday? We had the LA teams back in action, after the wildfires that are still going on there. But what was maybe like one of your takeaways from last night's action?
Let's see. I'm just pulling back up so I can relook at the games. It was a lot of fun. That Memphis-Houston game, I think, was kind of the highlight of the night. Seeing Jalen Green kind of go off the way he did. It was a really good matchup between two of the top teams out west. I think that was two straight games that Houston and Memphis played against each other, and Houston won both.
Yeah.
Could potentially be seeing that in the second round of the playoffs this year, which would be a lot of fun between two young, talented teams, kind of showcasing the new age of the NBA. So fun matchup. Hopefully Jalen Green can continue to play this well. I think stringing performances together has been something that he's good at, but it's not something that usually lasts more than a handful of games. So maybe this is it. Maybe he's finally turned the corner. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not really expecting him to shoot 13 for 18 from the field consistently, but if he can get to like the mid 40s, I feel like he has the size and the skill set to do it. It's just about harnessing that shot selection. But if he can get to mid 40s percentage-wise, that would do wonders for his fantasy value. So that's certainly something to watch. Amin Thompson, 4 turnovers, but you'll take that when you look at everything else he gave you. 19, 13, 4 assists, 2 steals, 5 blocks, and a 3-pointer. Like, that's insanely high value.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Jabari's going to be out a few more weeks, so he'll have more runway. So someone's like, is he going to get starters minutes when Jabari returns? And if you have him rostered, you're in your fantasy playoffs at that point. This is a guy who could be huge in category leagues.
Yeah, I mean, he's played at least 40 minutes in 3 of their last 4. Even when he wasn't starting, he was playing almost starter level minutes, like just under that. So yeah, I mean, he's a must roster player for the rest of the season to me. But as long as Jabari Smith's out, like, man, like, how good is he gonna be? Like, is he like a top 25 guy until Smith returns? Like, it's past 2 weeks, he's top 20 in 9 count on Basketball Monsters. Like, I don't know, he's gonna be really good in fantasy for a very, very long time.
For sure. We can skip over Pistons next. I don't really have much desire to speak about that. But
that's fair.
Cade Cunningham and Malik Beasley got the job done. I've been really impressed with what JB Bickerstaff has done and how much that team has progressed. So I'm getting some good fantasy value out of guys too up there. So it's been fun to watch. Just unfortunate that last night's game had to happen against the Knicks. So yeah, but without further ado, let's get into some questions here. We got a few building up. First one's from Thomas. Good afternoon. Keontae George, Tyus Jones, and Bogdan Bogdanovic a hold in 9 cat.
Ooh, I don't think that any of them are must hold players.
Yeah.
They're all, I think, borderline rosterable. I think Bogey's been incredibly disappointing this year, but he's also dealt with a handful of injuries. If he's able to just kind of be available, I'm expecting his numbers to improve. Tyus Jones has been meh. Keontae George has missed some time recently. Isaiah Collier's been playing well. So, like, I think what's going on in Utah is a lot more interesting than I think what it's being made out to be, just because they are not winning games and they're going to be back in the lottery. But, like, Isaiah Collier has been a really good point guard, and I think that was kind of the thing for Keontae George was, can he make the, like, transition from being just a really good scorer to a guy that can actually be their point guard of the future. And Collier is a guy that's kind of, I don't know, been a really good playmaker. So that's kind of interesting to watch. What's George's role look like for the rest of the season as they continue tanking? So I don't think any of them are guys that you 100% have to hold, but I don't think that they're guys that I just like want nothing to do with, like definitely leave them on the waiver wire kind of guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if we were to rank them, I would probably have Jones as highest in terms of the guys I'd want to hold on to, even though the assists have decreased over the past few weeks. I think he can get back to that level at some point. But the other two, I don't know, George, you have some like intrigue for late in the season to kind of evaluate him in terms of like being their point guard of the future. But he had enough time before the injury, I kind of feel like. And Isaiah Collier, his playmaking and also his defending, I think he's a superior defender to Keontae. So Yeah, I think I would drop him. Bogdan's similar situation with that leg injury he's been playing through. And also you've got DeAndre Hunter, who's kind of siphoning usage from him off the bench too. So, yeah, I think of those three, I'd hold on to Tyus, but I don't think any of them are must-holds like Noah said.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully Tyus Jones can get a little bit more of that playmaking. I know Devin Booker's kind of been taking on some of that workload,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Ryan is back in. Thanks for joining us again, Ryan. So I'll offer Tyrese Maxiell for my Scotty Barnes, Io DeSumo, and Alsar Thompson. Would you do it? I'm worried about shutdown risk with Barnes and Philly as 3 back-to-backs during my playoffs, so Maxey could do more. And he's in a weekly games cap of 15 roster spots, 3 IR. He's 11-0 right now, so he can afford to stash. Oh, that's a different question. We'll take this one first. Sorry about that. That's a good question. I think they're asking for 3 players for Tyrese Maxey. Interesting.
I mean, at face value, I want to say that, like, yes, that is, or that I wouldn't make that because I'd rather have Scotty, Io, and Asar Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
But the point about the shutdown risk,
yeah,
I guess it kind of depends on when your playoffs are. Like, are they end of season, like you're going almost all the way through, or are you doing kind of the more standard, like late March finish?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that they're going to shut down Scotty Barnes for like the final 2 months unless he actually has a major injury. Mm-hmm. So I'm not super worried about that until late in the year. Io's been out a little bit. He might be back tonight. And then Asar, he's not a guy that I really, really want to move just because he's starting now, like he's playing well. But I think the situation maybe makes that like the 3 back-to-backs during the playoffs. I guess we could look up and see when those are, but I think I wasn't saying that as like we should do that, but like we could. But Maxi, like that would obviously help him because like there's no way Embiid plays back-to-backs, and Paul George may still miss some of those. So I don't know. I think it's a little too costly to me. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's a high price to pay, but I'm intrigued by Tyrese Maxey because I feel like he's the one guy in Philadelphia of their 3 stars who's been somewhat reliable in terms of availability and production. Now, the field goal percentage has taken a hit compared to last season, but I'm not too worried about that. I certainly see the point about Barnes being a potential shutdown risk. Mm-hmm. It's all about a question of when, because it's not Toronto, or other than last night, the win over the Warriors, they've been so poor that I don't really know they have to do too much to like truly shut down, especially with Quickly's injuries. RJ Barrett's been in and out of the lineup. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a lot to give up, but I think for Tyrese Maxey, I would certainly consider it.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think, honestly, even though the Io is averaging more in this league than Asar, I'd value Asar more. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the thing for me is like his average. I assume like if it's only 21, that's pretty low, but he wasn't always playing a ton of minutes, and even recently, like as a starter, that hasn't necessarily been the case either. But I think his upside is so high. But also, Detroit isn't going to be tanking late in the year, so they're not going to force feed him minutes if they don't have to because they're trying to win games. So I think it is a steep price to pay, but it definitely is something that could end up paying off. And then you can always find some guys on your waiver wire to make up the difference.
I think I try to hold on to Io.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is the trade deadline about 3 weeks before there. What happens if they move Zach LaVine? You know, I think Io's clearly ahead of Patrick Williams, so I would expect him to be back in the starting lineup eventually. But if they move Zach LaVine at the trade deadline or before that, that could really open some things up for him. I don't know if you'd have another third person to add to this deal to make it, but if I was trying to make this deal, I'd probably try to hold on to Io DeSumo, to be honest with you, see if I had someone else that I could give up to get Maxey.
Yeah.
And now to the question I hastily read before. He's in a weekly games cap of 15 roster spots, 3 IR, 11-0. Great start to your season, obviously. Who are some players worth looking at stashing for the trade deadline in March? 12-team ESPN points league. I think Io, I don't know if he'd qualify as a stash, but I think, he kind of touched on that. Isaiah Collier, we mentioned him earlier in terms of Utah. Bryce Sensabaugh is another guy in Utah. Now, you may take a hit in terms of the efficiency, but if you need scoring, if you're looking to hold someone for that type of production, I think he would be in that mix too.
Yeah, I was actually, just before we were doing this, looking at some teams that'll be like the tanking teams that are really should be considered shutdown risks. I think the Pelicans are, obviously not playing very well at all, either at the trade deadline or just shutting players down. I think Jordan Hawkins is a guy that's worth stashing, especially for a points league. We've seen him fill it up. Yeah. And I think that he isn't a player that would get shut down. So if they're like, okay, Brandon Ingram, we're not going to trade you, but don't come back, basically, or not don't come back, but just don't come back this season because we're trying to keep losing. That's a lot. That came off a lot more harsh.
We're changing your code to the building.
The Jamal Adams means just trying to get in the like Zion, resting DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum maybe gets traded. Jordan Hawkins is a guy that can come in and average 20 a game, and I think that fits perfectly for a points league. And fits pretty perfectly as a stash.
Even Messi, I don't know what his percentage is in ESPN leagues, but Yahoo leagues, he's still under 40%. And I think he's someone who's going to be playing plenty of minutes. He already is, but I think he's going to play even more down the stretch because that team is not going anywhere. If they're in the East, maybe you give them a snowball's chance of making a run, but in the West, I don't see it happening there. So, he's someone else. But, I think that's kind of what you want to do right now. Maybe scour some rosters of teams that are really down in the standings and see, if there are any younger players who need to kind of prove themselves. And those may be the guys that you want to target for stashing. Brian, thanks for tuning in again. Good afternoon, sir. And we'll get on to your question. With 4 games left for the week, should I pick up Zaire Williams and drop Dennis Schroder?
I think it's a move I'd do.
Yeah. Even if Zaire's production can be a bit unpredictable, I'd take his upside over what we've seen from Dennis Schroder at this point. So, I would make that move.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that this Schroder thing is going to work out in Golden State. Maybe eventually, but not from a fantasy standpoint. Maybe it works for the team, but no, he's going to be nowhere near what he was earlier this season. Zaire scored in double figures in 5 straight games, been a consistent starter. We'll see as they get players back in the lineup if that changes. But, I'd do that.
Yeah. Okay, now this is an interesting Heat-related question from Nomad T. Jaime Jaquez Jr. Nikola Jovic rest of the season in Roto. You're quite welcome, sir. Go ahead, Noah.
No, I was yawning. I was trying to think.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that.
If you want to start, please. I'm trying to look at some numbers here.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Jovic has played good basketball recently, but so has Jaquez. I think, I think I would lean Jovic just because, let's see here. Yeah, I think Jovic just because Jaquez is kind of going to hurt you in free throw percentage. I don't know how much that matters in Roto, but I think Jovic has been a bit better there, but there's not too much separating those guys. I think they both should get good minutes moving forward because I know Jimmy Butler's due to come back in 2 games, but is he going to actually come back?
There was Shams Charania had the report just an hour or 2 ago that Jimmy Butler met face to face with Pat Riley and said, I'm not re-signing with the Heat. You should trade me. So I can't imagine him suiting up for the Heat again, even if his suspension's going to be done pretty soon. So they'll both play a lot until the trade deadline. Then we'll see what happens with who they bring back. I don't know. I think for a Roto standpoint, maybe you can make the case that Jovic is probably a better option over the next month or so, but then after the trade deadline, maybe things change and Jaquez feels like his role's a little safer. So rest of the season's hard to say, but from a Roto standpoint, I guess I would say Jovic until the trade deadline, then reevaluate. And maybe neither is a great option after the after the trade deadline.
Yeah, I just wonder what type of trade they'd be able to work out for Jimmy Butler just because of the price tag. Like, I know Phoenix has been mentioned, but it's one of those things. Oh, it's kind of funny. I think one of the reports is that he kind of felt that the owner of the Suns would be more willing to put out like that large contract that the Heat aren't. And I've never been wealthy, but I kind of wonder what it feels like to kind of read that you kind of come off as a mark and
like that dude will pay me way too much. I want to.
I just wonder what Matt Ishbia kind of thought when he read that. I know they probably want to get off the Bradley Beal contract, especially with that no trade clause. But that's something else to kind of consider here. It's like, where can Jimmy possibly go? Or this is a case where they just tell him, look, you can work out. We'll have like resources available to you, but we're just going to hold on to you till you opt out in the summer. And maybe they work out a sign and trade or something like that then. But I don't know how with the new salary cap and all that, I don't know how they're going to be able to work out a proper trade for him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Suns are the team just like that makes the most sense, but we'll see if something changes. Mm-hmm. But in that case, if it's like Beal, Nurkic, just to like make, I don't know exactly how the contracts fit there. I don't know their numbers off the top of my head, and then maybe some other filler pieces, but like, the Suns aren't going to want to give up anybody that helps them win. Mm-hmm. Do the Heat also try and get off of certain contracts or something like Duncan Robinson or Terry Rozier? I don't know. This is entirely speculation, but I think it just sounds like a messy deal both ways and not going to be great for fantasy.
Yeah. And even if you want to add a third team, there aren't too many teams that have the room, to get something done. So, yeah. Trace Jackson Davis or Malik Beasley, 12-team ESPN points. TJD has more upside, but at risk of Kerr changing the minutes. Beasley has a safer floor, but a lower ceiling. This is a good question, especially after last night. I think I would lean Beasley here. And the reason why I say it is that we still don't know Jaden Ivey's situation. Now they be reevaluated another 3 weeks or so. Then we'll see what happens there. But either way, Malik's in a position where he can give you good high 20 to low 30s in terms of minutes, and he can certainly get hot. And as you mentioned with Steve Kerr in the minutes, Trace Jackson Davis should probably play starters minutes, but it hasn't happened consistently. So I think that's a concern there.
Yeah, I think I'd lean Beasley as well, specifically in a points league, because obviously in a category league, you're really just getting points and threes and nothing else. But Trace Jackson Davis, like, for example, in their game against Toronto last night, played 30 minutes, 3 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Like, that's not doing much in a points league. So, I wouldn't even necessarily agree that Trace Jackson Davis has more upside this season, specifically in points leagues. Like, I just think Beasley's a better option.
Joseph, thanks for tuning in. You guys, should I be worried about OG Anunoby? He's been stinking it up lately. 12-team, 9-cat head-to-head. I try not to panic. I think we've seen things with both of those Knicks wings, whether it be him or Mikal Bridges, where they've had some rough spots and then they've kind of turned things on. Anunoby, just to provide reference, is ranked 189th in Basketball Monster over the past 2 weeks in 9-cat. So yeah, he has been poor recently, but I would exercise some patience here. Now they only have 2 more games this week, but week 13 is another 3-game week, it looks like. So actually, we are on week 13. Sorry about that. Just a second here. Week 13 in Yahoo, they've got another 3 games, a Monday, Tuesday, back-to-back, and then Saturday. So the schedule isn't great. So if you wanted to make a move now, would probably be the time to do it. Kind of throw him on your trade wire, see if anybody wants to bite and see what they offer in return. But I don't know if I'd be too concerned, but I think schedule-wise, this will be a good time to consider doing something if you wanted to see what you can get in return.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned. It's a few kind of bad games recently, but I mean, some poor shooting. But really, if you look at like the past 2 week numbers that you were looking at in comparison to season long numbers, the main difference is, a drop in rebounds. And like free throw percentage is down, but he barely shoots those. Like the defensive numbers are slightly down, but it makes it look like it's a bigger difference. But he also only played 31 minutes when they played the Bucks because they blew him out by so much that Tibbs actually didn't play him 40 plus minutes per game. So I'm not too. It's just some like fluky things. I think that maybe like if you want to look at it the flip side, maybe it is a good time to buy low if someone's looking at that numbers or those numbers are kind of panicking a little.
That's a good point. Joseph, thanks for tuning in. How concerned are you about Jalen Johnson? If and when he comes back, is the injury something to worry about the rest of the season? I was offered him for my Paul George straight up in 9-cat head-to-head.
I mean, I think I am concerned about it just because I haven't really given much of a timeline, but he's just been kind of immediately ruled out. It would be nice if they were like, hey, like this is a 2-week injury. He'll be reevaluated after that. And it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah. But it's just been not really that. So it's hard to give much, or like we don't have much clarity on the situation. It could be he's back for their next game. I mean, I think he's already been ruled out for this one, but like the next one after that. But yeah, I think I would trade Paul George for him, like for sure. Even if you have to wait a few more games and every once in a while he's still missing games from time to time, like until the Hawks come out and say, hey, he's going to be out for a month, then it's like, okay, things change. But as of now, there's no reason to think that. So I'd much rather have Jalen Johnson, even if I have to wait a couple games.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's kind of like the Tyrese situation where there really hasn't been much clarity on the injury front in terms of the reporting. But yeah, I think I would take Jalen Johnson over Paul George as well. Okay, Joseph's got some names. Hold or drop Tim Hardaway Jr., Dino Gafford, Al Horford, Mike Conley, and Malcolm Brogdon. I know I'm dropping the last two.
Yeah, definitely. I still think you hold Gafford and Horford. But definitely the last two are the first two I'd be looking to drop. And then probably Tim Hardaway after that. But I don't think he's like a must drop player. He's just you just know what it is. Like he's streaky. He's either going to go for 25 with 6 threes, or he's going to score 2 points and be out there getting cardio. Like it's just So I mean, I'd say he's pretty much in the middle of being a hold and a drop. Like you just kind of take a chance every time you put him in your lineup.
Yeah, Gafford I'd hold for sure. Horford, I can see the reason why he's included, but I would still hold on to him, especially Porzingis is probably going to need the occasional night off. Same with Horford in terms of back-to-backs. And we've seen them the Celtics stagger that in the past. So I'd expect more of the same there. But yeah, I think Gafford and Horford probably be the two holds. Hardaway, consider it with the Ivy injury. And the other two, I just think it's over, unfortunately for those guys. But
yeah, and Boston does have another back-to-back this week and then another one next week. So that's at least 2 starts right there for Horford.
And 2 absences. So
well, yeah, but you got
to yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do have to be positive. You're right. Finally got Zion Williamson back. What range should I be looking to trade it?
Range is such a hard thing to say, but I would say a top 50 player, if not a little bit top 40 maybe, even though he hasn't been anywhere near that. I don't know. I don't think you should sell low.
Yeah, I think you're pitching 50 to 75 based on hope. Like, I don't know, man. Just $1 in a dream, right? That's basically that's basically what it is, because you've got his past injury history. You've got the potential of a shutdown. You're going to have to put on like your salesman hat and just absolutely sell someone on taking him, because there's a lot of risk at play here.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's almost like you waited this long.
Yeah.
Even if he hasn't been great so far, like I expect that there will be like a really good stretch of games. Like I don't think he's just going to have like a few more duds and get shut down. Like there will be a really good stretch that like kind of reminds everybody who Zion is. But it's just how healthy is he going to be, and that's I'd say if you're looking for a range, I'd be trying to get somebody in the top 50 to feel good about it.
All right. How big of a hit do you think Isaiah Hartenstein takes when Chet Holmgren returns? Should we be aggressively looking to move him? If so, what are some names to target? I'm not moving him. No, I haven't heard anything recently on.
The initial timeline was 8 to 10 weeks, and I believe we're at 9 weeks. That was 8 to 10 weeks for an update, by the way. It wasn't 8 to 10 weeks for a return. So I don't know. I think I saw a video of him doing some shooting this morning, though.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean anything, though. It could still be a few more weeks.
Yeah, I would hold Hartenstein, to be honest with you, because we get that update of what he's doing or where he's at in the process. That could just be like more spot shooting, a little bit of running and whatnot. And then you've got return to competition, that protocol. So I would hold on to Hartenstein. The question is, if there's a hit, like when does it happen? Like if does Chet return in time for your fantasy playoffs, or is it into the fantasy playoffs? Because if it's the latter, I think you're probably going to deal with like a load management situation for him in terms of how many minutes he plays. So I don't think Hartenstein's going to take too much of a hit this season, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they're 32-6. Like, there's no reason for them to play play Chet 35 minutes a game when he gets back. So they will probably. I'd be very surprised if they don't ease him back in, like 15 minutes the first game. Hopefully, get him up to 20 to 25, like by like late March. So it kind of depends on when your playoffs are. If they're, end of the season, then I'm sure they're still going to be trying to ramp Chet up. But they also may be so far ahead in the West that they don't feel the need to do that much. So, I don't think Hartenstein does take this massive hit. Like, he may lose out on a few minutes, but they may want to start Chet and play him 20 minutes per game, but just have me part of the starting lineup. And then Hartenstein gets 28 minutes per game off the bench. He's playing 29.7 per game this season. So, like, it's not that much of a difference. So, no, I don't think I'd be aggressively looking to move him. I think I'm totally fine just holding on to him unless you are able to sell him. Like, and that's, I guess, always the case. Like, if you're able to get somebody that's better, then do it. But, no, there's no reason to move him.
Yeah. All right. Just a little clarity on the Maxi trade we discussed earlier. And Ryan said he's been trying to get the other manager to add either Andrew Wiggins or Goga Bitadze. So it'll be Barnes, Io, and Alsar for Maxi plus Wiggins or Goga. Now, if you got Goga out of that, I think I would make that deal 3 for 2. I'm not so sure about Wiggins, even though he has been better this year.
I was going to say, because it is a points league, so I might even, I don't know if I'd lean Wiggins. It would depend on the average in there, but I'd feel better about that because he has been scoring at a high rate. So, I think that would be, I'd feel more comfortable with that deal.
All right. Paul, thanks for tuning in. What would you do with Zach Edey? It is really hard to drop him after witnessing the amazing couple weeks before the ankle injury. I think he's a hold. I know he wasn't great last night, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that may have been as much the matchup as it was him just not playing very well. Foul trouble, fouled out after 24 minutes, but
just looking at some of his recent games, like the minutes haven't always been there. He did have like a few good games in December that were like, oh shoot, he's arrived. Like, we're talking about a guy that could win Rookie of the Year if he keeps playing like this. And And then more recently, it just hasn't been that.
Yeah.
Even if he has been starting, like the minutes have been there, the production hasn't been there. So it is kind of difficult to drop him, but I wouldn't be, I guess, tied to holding on to him.
Yeah.
If there's somebody else better on the waiver wire, I think that he's okay to drop. I wouldn't be saying don't have him on your team no matter what, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe it is kind of a matchup thing. We'll see how they use him against the Spurs. Their next 2 games are against San Antonio, so
Ooh,
I don't know. We'll see how do they feel like, hey, this is our option for Wemby, or do they feel like somebody else can guard Wemby on the perimeter and let Zach Edey sit in the paint? Like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Obviously not like let's send Zach Edey out there to guard Wemby on the perimeter because I can't. That's mean.
Yeah, I don't think that would work too well. Okay. Would you let go of Tyus Jones for either Cason Wallace, Ben Simmons, or Khalil Ware? Or would you rather stream that spot?
I think I'd be fine with – I don't feel great about Ben Simmons. I think Ware played really well in their last game, but that was with Bam out of the lineup. So it's like if Bam is missing more games, then yes, like absolutely. But if Bam is back in the lineup for the next game, then it's more Cason Wallace has been a pretty consistent starter. I feel pretty good about that. And then Ben Simmons is just Ben Simmons, man. I don't know if I feel good about that. So I would say definitely Cason Wallace, and that's probably the one I feel best about there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Ware intriguing upside, but like you said, no Bam Adebayo last night, so he went off, got good minutes off the bench too. But that's not really a reliable situation. I think Wallace, whether he starts or comes off the bench, he's going to play mid to high 20s in minutes per game. So I think he would be the one I would consider dropping Tyus Jones for. Paul, would you keep CJ McCollum in a 12-team 9-cat or try to trade him? If you were to trade McCollum while his value is still there, who would you realistically target?
I mean, top 75 guy. I think that's probably a best way to put it, is put a range on it, not a name, because we can go through, I guess, a handful of names of like who would we rather have. That'd probably be the only way to do that. But it says while his value is still there, do you see like him either getting traded at the deadline and that changing his production, or like as a shutdown candidate? Is that something that we're worried about with CJ?
I think either one would be a concern. Because at this point in his career, I think if you were to get traded to a playoff team, it would be primarily as like a catch and shoot guy. Maybe you get some creation when the stars are off the floor, but I think that would really limit his upside in terms of fantasy. If he stays in New Orleans, you got the concerns about being shut down at some point. I think 75, like in terms of a range, like 75 to 90 would be where I kind of aim in terms of players, because I think the floor is pretty reliable, but the ceiling just isn't that high. So you're not going to get too much even with his recent run right now. So I think I'd be in agreement in terms of the range to where you would want to aim for a player to acquire here. Let's see. Would you throw out one example, Mikal Bridges for CJ McCollum?
That is a pretty good one. I guess I just feel safer about Mikal. Just the fact that we know like Tibbs is going to play him a ton. And even if he has had his struggles, like the opportunity is going to be there, and it may not be for CJ McCollum like we discussed. So I think I'd rather have Mikal.
Yeah. All right. Yosef asked, we just discussed this player. What do you guys think of Khalil Ware the rest of the season? He would need a Bam injury, I think, in order to be like fantasy relevant, because Miami has no reason to pull the plug in this season. Like they can still be a playoff team with the group that they have. So maybe his play last night gets him a longer look as part of the second unit, but you're still looking at about 13 to 15 minutes unless Eric Spoelstra decides that he wants to play Ware and Bam next to each other.
Fingers crossed, because that'd be a lot of fun. I think that
Mhm.
that's definitely something that they should experiment with.
Yeah.
We'll see if it happens, but yeah, I mean, minutes in the teens isn't enough for him to be like a standard league guy. But if he can be seeing like 15, 18 minutes per game, maybe enough in like super deep leagues, and then
Mhm.
occasionally if he has games like he did last night, then he's definitely worth keeping around.
Yeah. All right. Ryan has brought us some stash options for the rest of the season. Donovan Clingan, Jalen Smith, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Kyle Filipowski. How would you rank these four?
Yes.
Yeah.
How would I rank them? I'd probably go Clingan. I really like Bryce Sensabaugh, but I think Clingan, Sensabaugh, Filipowski, Jalen Smith, because I think Smith is very, very dependent on Vooch getting traded. If
Yeah.
that doesn't happen, then that means like no value.
Mhm.
Whereas the other three, I feel very confident that those teams will pull the plug eventually, and they will get like a bunch of starts. Like Bryce Sensabaugh is already starting to play pretty well, so maybe you could even, as a stash, I'd still prefer Klingon, but as someone that's
Mhm.
like can provide value now and later, like
Yeah.
Sensabaugh might be a better option in that case. But I don't know. What's to say that Vooch doesn't, like, Vooch gets traded and maybe they get like a young prospect center that they'd
Mhm.
rather play over Jalen Smith, or
Yeah.
Vooch, gets traded, but they just want to play somebody else over the Jalen Smith to help them tank if that's the direction
Mhm.
they want to go. Like, I don't know. I don't feel as good about Jalen Smith, but I've been pretty
Yeah.
anti Jalen Smith for a really long time, and I don't think I can flip respectfully. And I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'd have Klingon ranked first as well. We've seen some interesting things with Portland's rotation recently where guys have just been ruled out because they have three centers who all need rotation minutes. Klingon was given a night off last week and then started the next game because Ayton and Robert Williams were both out. So I think in terms of early on, that may be a bit of a question mark. But after the trade deadline, excuse me, even if they were to move, even if they weren't able to move Ayton or Williams, he's going to play good minutes. Just you don't
yeah,
use a lottery pick on a guy just to have him
no.
play bench minutes. So I think he'd be number one, and then Sensabaugh two, and then Filipowski three. Those guys are both part of a clear rebuild. Jalen Smith, like what's stopping the Bulls from like changing course and deciding they want to compete for a play-in spot once again?
Maybe
I I hope not,
that'd be awesome.
but dude, that fan
I
base
love that.
would lose it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be my one question there. So I don't know if I would hold on to Jalen. I wouldn't pick up Jalen Smith right now. That's one of those things where it's like you race to the waiver wire as soon as they trade Vooch. If he's there,
Mhm.
you get him fine. If you're not, you'll probably be fine as well.
As far as cleaning, because I know you mentioned the rest day that they gave him, they did
Mm.
him so dirty by saying, "Yeah, no, Donovan Clingan rest." Every other player that's playing the second night, or like it's the second night of a back to back, that is coming off an injury, which he had a pretty severe
Yeah.
knee injury that they kind of
Mhm.
rushed him back from. They just said, "Nope, rest." They didn't say knee injury management,
Yeah.
and everyone ran with it. Yo, this guy's a rookie playing 15 minutes per game, and he's getting a rest night. The NBA is so
Yeah.
soft. I'm like, that just wasn't the case. I was like, they just, like, Portland, like, you have to report this as, you can't say
Yeah.
rest. You can't
Yeah.
say
You,
rest.
you can't put your guy out there like that.
Yeah,
It's
they
like
did him dirty.
It's like the Kings situation, right? Still haven't talked about why they
Oh
fired
my
Mike Brown,
goodness.
but they've got De'Aaron out there. You answer the question. It's like you gotta protect your guys to a certain extent, man. All right. Jordan Poole, the rest of the season, is he a shutdown risk?
I don't necessarily think he is. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, an actual injury would change anything, but like he played 78 games last year.
Hmm.
I don't think that Jordan Poole is, like, respectfully, winning them a bunch of games.
Yeah.
So like he may miss some games, like down like really like end of the season. But no, I wouldn't say that he's like a shutdown risk.
He's one of those guys that you don't have to actively tank with. Like you can continue to put him out there. Sadly, he hasn't really impacted winning there. Now, obviously, it's not his fault because
yeah,
yeah,
intentionally, like
Washington is
they're
Washington.
trying
Yeah.
to lose. They're trying to develop their young guys, but like he's still a fun player to watch when he has it going. So maybe that's what it does is we lose games and it's an entertaining product because he's either going to have a crazy scoring night where he hits some step back threes, or he's going to do something so stupid that you tell the story for 20 years to your grandkids about that time that, oh, I went to a Wizards game and Jordan Poole did something so stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's.
But it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're just gonna have to agree that he is not a shutdown risk for the reasons that we stated.
Agreed.
All right, Josh Kinwall Singh. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, feel free to correct me in the comments there. Kat, Tobias Harris, and Nikola Jovic from my Mikal Bridges. Ivica Zubac, Chet Holmgren, and Goga Bitadze. 9 Kat. I wouldn't do that just because I wouldn't want to give up Cat. Like if I'm the other manager, because he's a top 5 player. Like I know you're giving him an extra player, but I'm not doing that, especially since we still don't know exactly when Chet's going to be back.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have that first package like centered around Cat because I mean, like if Chet were to come back, say like within like 2 weeks, like we've talked about the minutes restriction that'll probably be on resting back-to-backs. But like I don't really know why someone would trade Cat for this package. So like if you're in a situation where you're undefeated and you're like, okay, like let me try and trade for Chet because I'm going to make the playoffs and we get like some sort of bye or something, depending on how your league is set up. Like maybe Chet is playing really good by the time like the playoffs roll around. If you're already locked in, you're locked in. Mm-hmm. There'd be no reason to trade Cat to make that happen. So I don't think that's enough for me to
That's the thing. If your team's undefeated, Cat's probably a big reason why it's So yeah, I would if I'm that other manager, like you're gonna have to come back with like a more robust trade package here because we're not. Cat probably have to stay unless you made an offer that he absolutely could not refuse, and I don't believe that this offer qualifies as such. All right, drop Jeremy Sohan for Donovan Clingan. 12 team 11 Cat, standard 9 plus double doubles and triple doubles, head-to-head dynasty. Looking long term and not particularly a fan of Sohan's lackluster free throw percentage and threes. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this dynasty league doesn't go deep enough if Donovan Clingan was on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy to me that could even be a possibility. I think it's a great move for dynasty because Donovan Clingan I haven't done rankings in a while, but I would imagine like a top 100, maybe even top 75 player. Yeah. And Jeremy Sohan's still incredibly valuable as well. And I would recommend rostering both in your dynasty league, depending on the size of it, I suppose. But I think that's a great move, especially long term. I think Klingan's going to be a fantasy stud. Like we've seen what Walker Kessler can do, and I think it's going to be pretty similar, like production wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd also ask if there's someone else on your roster you can drop to go get Sohan. I'd probably get him back because I think he'll have value as well. The defensive stats. He can do some secondary playmaking. The percentages in threes aren't great, the free throw percentage, but I think he brings a lot of other good things to the table, especially in 11 Cat, where he'd be worth holding on to in Dynasty if you can get him back.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you prefer PJ Washington or Lively rest of the season points league?
Probably go PJ for a points league.
Yeah. You do run the risk of his shot opportunities dropping significantly once Luka and Kyrie are back, but I think the scoring upside in the points league is a little bit higher with him.
Yeah, and Luka's still going to be out for a little while. Like Kyrie could be back tonight, but it's at least, I'd imagine, 3 more weeks before Luka's back, so feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Do you think Alsar Thompson's minutes will increase as the season goes on, or is it due to his shooting woes?
I mean, I'd imagine that it increases, especially as he just like if he's playing well enough to earn it. Because Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. as floor spacers to give Cade Cunningham room definitely helps out a lot.
Yeah.
but Asar Thompson's such an impactful defender. So I think it could end up just kind of like honestly being what it has been. It's like kind of varying based on the matchup even, or like
Yeah.
who's hitting shots. Because if like Hardaway's cold, then like Asar Thompson's defense is more valuable than Hardaway not hitting shots. So I would imagine it increases, but it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. I don't think the increase will be too much. But like you said, it's going to be about the matchup just because of how good he is defensively. They may need him on the floor more for some of these matchups. Like he guarded Jalen Brunson for large stretches of last night's game. They went some zone as well, but matchups like that where they're up against a premier perimeter scorer, Alsar is going to be key for them. So I think at minimum you're looking at mid-20s still. So I think he'll be fine. All right. Matt is tuning in. Thanks for tuning in again. Matt, would you drop Peyton Pritchard for Andrew Nembhard? 12-team, 9-cat head-to-head.
Pritchard has not been good recently.
I think I'd drop him. Not just that, but also the Halliburton injury. It's the same hamstring that he hurt in the playoffs last year and really limited him during the summer in the Olympics. So I think for that reason, I probably would make that move right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more about Nembhard than about Pritchard because Pritchard hasn't been very good, but I don't think he's not a rosterable player anymore. He's just had a few poor games, but yeah, Nembhard is the priority.
All right. Just quickly going back to the large trade question we touched on. The opposing manager is undefeated and trying to take a gamble to get better by getting Chet. So there's a little explanation for us on why that trade was put out there.
But Towns is still better than Chet, I would say.
That's definitely a gamble, but I would not do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. You're dropping one. Royce ONeal or Dennis Schroder, head-to-head 9-cat with assist turnover ratio instead of turnovers.
I think Schroder, right?
Yeah, he's out. Man.
You just can't roster him. It's got to be like Royce ONeal's been kind of like he's had some really good stretches, but like
his first game back Sunday didn't start off great, but then he had those key threes down the stretch, and I know Grayson Allen should be back tonight if I'm not mistaken, but I would still go with Royce ONeal because you also have the unpredictable factor of Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn's been solid in that starting role, but even if he continues to start with Royce back, will his minutes decrease just to have Royce on the floor more? So I would much rather have Royce ONeal rostered than Dennis Schroder.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Joel Embiid's out, but will Gershon Yabusele's box score get OKC'd tonight? That's a good question, but who else are you going to play? If you have Sixers bigs right now, if you're looking to account for Embiid's absence, I mean, it pretty much has to be Yabusele if you're talking about a streaming option.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to play a ton of minutes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play really well. You're just rolling the dice.
Yeah. Well, man's just out there, but I don't know. Maybe Kelly Oubre, different position, obviously, but
yeah, I think like Yabusele is going to be the guy that kind of benefits, but he's been pretty like the last two games, even though he's played a lot of minutes, and I think that there's just a chance that happens again. But there's also a chance that like he hits a few threes, grabs a few extra rebounds, and just has a really good night. So. It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. Okay. Nomad T, Clint Capella or Onyeka Okongwu? And any thoughts on Peyton Watson the rest of the season? You're the Hawks guy, so we'll let you go ahead and handle this one.
Neither. No, I think, I mean, I don't feel very good about either, but it's, of course, going to once again come down to is Clint Capella traded? And of course, there's once again been rumors of that happening. Kongwu's been a little bit better recently. If Capella's traded, then I'd rather have a Kongwu. If there isn't a trade, then I'd probably just like Capella's just safer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like this is actually like a pretty good chance that he gets traded. Like there's been some rumors of that happening. Like there are teams that could use a center. Like I think that him getting traded to the Suns just makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see if that happens. I don't know. Neither is a great option this year.
Fantasy managers have been trying to make a Okongwu happen for years.
Yeah.
So,
And now it's like he's playing worse than he has the
Mhm.
last couple of years this season.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, do I even like how bad do I even want him to start now? Like he's been so
Yeah, for the sake of the mental health of those fantasy managers, I kind of hope there's a trade just to put a Okongwu out there starters minutes because I don't know.
he should be good if he's playing
Yeah.
30 minutes per game, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I also go back to Larry Nance getting a couple starts and being like the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
center the Hawks have had. So not actually, but like having him as like a floor spacer was a lot of fun with Trae Young. But there's also the second part of that question with Peyton Watson rest of the
Oh,
season.
yeah.
I don't feel very good about that. Like when Aaron Gordon just missed some games, they went to Russell Westbrook, not Peyton Watson. So it's kind of like he's probably not going to start.
Yeah.
He'll just kind of be like a solid bench guy, which I don't think makes him rosterable in like 12-team leagues.
Yeah. Not really too much to add to that. It's just is what it is at this point. Russ getting that, not just getting the opportunity, but playing well. And I think that's kind of pretty much it for Peyton Watson in terms of fantasy value this season. But
Yeah.
who knows? You get multiple injuries, maybe that changes things a little bit. All right. And follow up from Daniel on the Sohan dilemma. Just cleared waivers and is now a free agent. He's got Noah Clowny, Bob Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Eve Misi, Alsar Thompson, and Zachary Risache. Swap any for Sohan.
That's a good team,
Yeah.
and if that's the bench, then I'm assuming that like this is just kind of a shallow dynasty league.
Mhm.
I think the number that a lot of dynasty leagues try and hit is like 250 to 300 players rostered,
Yeah.
but I guess it kind of depends on league size as well. But if this is your bench, I'm imagining that it's like 15 players rostered.
Mhm.
So actually, maybe it could be up to 250, but I think I'd rather have Sohan than Clowny or Risache.
Okay.
And those, like one of those two would probably be the ones that I'd be looking to drop. And it may just be Risache is the one I'd rather. I mean, Sohan probably ranks higher than just like betting those bottom two, but I struggle to like, if there's like this young guy I really like that's sitting on my bench, struggle to actually drop them, even if there is somebody else that's also really good available. But I think, or maybe you even look at this as like let me make a consolidation trade and trade a couple of these younger guys for like a higher quality younger prospect, and then also
Okay.
pick up Sohan like to try and maximize your assets there.
Could you also do that for like a draft pick? I'm not sure
Yeah,
how.
for sure. Like that's also like like trade some of those guys, try and get a couple
Mhm.
picks in the future. Like that's also definitely a good move.
Yeah, I think that probably be your course of action for Risache. I'm not really sure how successful it would be for Clowney, but maybe Risache in exchange for a future pick, just because he was a high lottery pick. Maybe you get something there, and then add Sohan to take up that roster spot. Be something to consider.
Yep, I think that's a good move.
And with that, Daniel, thank you for tuning in as always. Thank you all for tuning in and dropping your questions. We might get out here a little early this week. I think we should, have a lot of good questions once again. As always, Rotoworld Basketball Show with ourselves and Dan Titus, Yahoo Sports, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. You catch that all your streaming platforms, and we also air on Twitch live. But we've got one last question here, it looks like. Alex asked, is Nurk a hold in 12-team 9-cat roto? Can he be relevant again rest of the season?
Can he be if he gets traded somewhere that actually wants to play him? Sure. He's not a hold to me.
Yeah. You can't hold that, man. Like
No.
not literally, but I'm just saying, like you can't keep him
Yes,
rostered. Like
that too.
yeah. In terms of rest of the season, yeah, he's going to need a trade to a team that needs his specific skill set because he can be a good facilitator offensively, but he can't guard. Like that's why he's not playing.
Yeah.
That's why he was a DNP CD before the illness. He can't guard. So yeah, and I think on that point, maybe Oso Iguodala is going to have a little more value here moving forward for Phoenix. So there's a name to kind of consider. He wouldn't be a stash because they're clearly trying to compete now. But Oso Iguodala, if he can continue to get minutes and hold his own on the glass, he might be someone who has value in deep leagues the rest of the season here.
Yep, I agree. I think he's at least worth taking a look at to see if you can get him now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, with that, I think we've touched on quite a few topics. As I said before, thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next Tuesday.